Hello, this is Real Religion. I'm Joseph Birch, and today I'm going to continue the core belief theory. The second part is going to be about the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Last time I did the 5 Pillars of Islam. This is the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. So, a little background. If you're not familiar, Buddhism comes from the ancient teachings of a man named Siddhartha Gautama in India. He would later be called the Buddha, which means the enlightened one, because basically he left a very privileged, very upper class life to go and find a life that would be more spiritual fulfillment for him, and he found that being a total ascetic and practicing just self-denial was not all that much better for him than being rich and having everything. So he tried to find a middle way, and basically he turned to meditation, a lot of meditation. And one day he was meditating under a tree and he reached enlightenment. He spent the rest of his life teaching what he called the way things are. There's still debate, actually, about whether or not Buddhism should technically be called a religion. There are definitely religious aspects to it, especially when you get into beliefs about reincarnation, karma, the god. There are gods of a sort in Buddhism. They're not exactly like gods in other religions. They're not so much creators. They're not architects of human events. There's not a huge devotion, submission, worship to them. There are varying levels of acknowledgement of the gods. I know there are plenty of Buddhists who are perfectly comfortable being described as non-theists, including the Dalai Lama. So the gods have different importance to different people, and obviously they're not supreme beings like gods might be in other religions. So Buddhism, you can start with the Four Noble Truths, and they're all about us, humans, and they're about all living creatures, actually. What they are is, but none of them are theological, like you might expect. What they are is, the first one is the truth of suffering. One of Siddhartha, the Buddha's major problems with his early life was he saw suffering. He saw inequality and pain and loss and the cycle of life, and he just thought, what's going on here? I need to understand this. So the first truth is his observation: suffering exists. That's the truth of suffering, is that we suffer. We're not content. We can have anything in the world. We're not content. There's physical suffering. There's emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual suffering. That's the first noble truth. The second truth is the truth of the cause of suffering. Suffering, according to Buddhism, is caused by our desires. It's caused by our attachments and our ignorance, because our desires are impossible. We want unlimited worldly goods. We want immortal life on earth. We want to be happy all the time, and it's not possible, not practical. Would we even want that if we could have it? It's the question. And for Buddhism, nothing can satisfy, and for our desires for things that can never really fulfill us is what causes our suffering. Our desire for things that we can never have causes our suffering. And it's these fires that fuel the cycle of rebirth, of reincarnation. We keep coming back and coming back, living life after life, based on our karma, might determine what kind of life and where, but, it's a cycle of suffering, basically, to Buddhism. So, the third noble truth, though, is where things start to look up a little bit, the truth of the end of suffering. Suffering has an end. It can be overcome, gotten rid of. So, either in this life or spiritually by achieving nirvana. Nirvana is the goal of Buddhism. It's also mentioned in other Eastern religions. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is a Hindu scripture, it talks about Brahman Nirvana, which is the reuniting of the Atman with Brahman. And if you want to know what that means, you can go back to Basics of Hinduism or Hinduism, One God or Many, which are earlier videos that I did. In Buddhism, though, Nirvana is a liberation. It's a different kind of losing yourself. You're not losing yourself in a supreme being. You're losing yourself by realizing that you don't really have a self. You lose attachment to the self. So the sense of your individual separate self is something that Buddhism really challenges. And essentially, the ultimate freedom is to exist in this transcendent state where you're no longer attached, you're no longer desiring things, you're no longer aware of this separate self, of this, individual that wants things that it doesn't need. You're just kind of existing. Some compare it to ceasing to exist. Some people, especially in the West, are critical of it because it seems to be non-individualistic, the non-self and the non-soul and the emptiness that Buddhism talks about, that I love to explore with a Buddhist in an interview. These things are challenging for some people to get their heads around, and some people don't like the idea of letting go. Kind of the conflict sometimes in the East and the West religions. In the East, a lot of it is about losing yourself in something greater, whether it's in a supreme, identity or losing your identity. And a lot of Western religions, we like, in the West, this kind of idea of heaven where you live forever and your people that you know are there. Now, not always. That's a very simplified, generalization, but there's some truth to it. So the fourth noble truth of Buddhism, speaking of truth, is the path to the end of suffering. So the third truth was that suffering, the end of suffering, can happen. The fourth truth is the truth about how we get there. So the Buddha says that there is this eightfold path, the noble eightfold path. And I can talk about what these steps are in a future video, because I want to keep this short. We're coming up on the end here, but the fourth truth is that you can end suffering by following the noble eightfold path, which is going to be a future video. It might be the next video, or I might do something else between now and then. If you are interested in the core beliefs of a religion or sect, let me know, either in the comment section below, or if you check the description, there's my email and my Twitter there. You can use those to contact me and say, hey, I want to hear about the 10 Commandments. I want to hear about the 5 points of Calvinism. I want to hear about the 7 sacraments. I want to hear about the more about the 5 pillars of Islam. I want to hear about the eightfold path. I want to hear, the tenets of Confucianism. I want to hear a list of the scriptures, the Vedas or the Hebrew Bible or the whatever. Just let me know. And also, anybody who wants to be interviewed, or anybody who wants to hear a specific type of interview or a specific topic, again, let me know. Comment section or in the description, my email and my Twitter. Thank you so much for watching.